Hello and welcome to Tov Jewish News Channel. With us today is Amir Avivi, Brigadier General and the founder of the Bitchonisi movement. Amir, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Amir, recently in the past few weeks, we've seen the gradual progress of the IDF forces in the Gaza Strip. We've seen many Hamas terrorists giving up and refusing to fight anymore. How do you see the evolution of the fight in the Gaza Strip? Do you see it's going towards total Hamas capitulation, or does it go in another direction?
So at the moment, Israeli Defense Forces are basically finishing to take over the whole northern part of the Gaza Strip. All the terrorists in the north retreated to two main towns, Sajaiya and Jibalia, and the army is fighting in these areas now. And because it's the last stronghold and the army is deep inside these areas, you see terrorists starting to surrender. More and more picture of terrorists handing their weapons, surrendering in this area. But we have to remember the northern part of Gaza. It's a very dense area. It's a stronghold, but it's only 20% of the Gaza Strip. At the same time, the IDF is attacking in South Gaza, in Khan Yunis. We surrounded this city and we're going in. And this fight is fierce because Khan Yunis is the strongest stronghold of Hamas in the south. And there is a fierce fighting, and it will take probably 2-3 weeks to really manage to take control of all of Khan Yunis. Having said that, we have to remember that the center part of Gaza we haven't touched yet. This is the area of El Burej, Dir El Balach, Nuseirat, the camps of the center. It's a big area, not as dense as the south and the north, but it's a big area. And also we have Rafah, bordering Egypt. So I would say that we have at least a month and a half, maybe two, to just really take over the Gaza Strip and then to clean it up, to dismantle all the infrastructure. That might take even a year or more.
So, Amir, you mentioned the pictures that the IDF released of Hamas terrorists giving up. They're being lined up in without clothes in a line in front of Israeli soldiers, and many people say it's not moral, that it has no strategic purpose. It doesn't help anyone, and it's just creating a hate in Palestinians' hearts towards Israel. You, as a person who have a lot of experience in the military field, do you think that these pictures of the terrorists that gave up, that capitulated, have an actual purpose?
Yeah, I think that psychologically it affects the terrorists that are fighting us. These pictures are very important. We want to see our enemies surrendering. We want to send these messages both to the terrorists that are fighting us and also to the Israeli society that is encouraged to see the IDF winning. We saw this terrible, devastating attack on Israel on the 7th of October. Many people felt afraid and helpless, and now they see they have a strong army, and this army is able to attack and protect them and destroy our enemies. And this is exactly what we need to see.
So hundreds of terrorists have surrendered up to this point, and really, it's the first time Israel experiences such a thing in its history. Because previously we imprisoned Egyptian soldiers we fought with, or Syrian soldiers, but then after the war ended, we just sent them back to their countries. Now we're stuck with thousands of Hamas terrorists. And what do you think should be done to those terrorists? How should Israel deal with this problem?
So any terrorist who attacked our soldiers or participated in the 7th of October needs to be incarcerated. And if we need to enlarge our facilities, this is what we need to do. And also we have to remember that we have hostages, and in any future maybe a process of releasing them, if it's not militarily, then holding all these terrorists. This is an important card for us in order to be able to negotiate a hostages release.
But you're talking about imprisoning those terrorists, right? But they're not lone terrorists. They're not like the phenomena of terrorists grabbing a knife in the kitchen, going and stabbing a civilian in the street. These terrorists are part of a huge organization, and we'll have to keep thousands of them in prisons, indefinitely. Because if we release them back to the society, they can become a danger for the state. I just don't see really how can it work keeping such huge amounts of terrorists in prisons. How do you really see that happening?
So as long as we have hostages, this is the right thing to do. Later on, if we want to, banish them out of Israel or Gaza, this is something we know how to do, out of this region. We cannot have this kind of people on our borders.
Okay, and you mentioned the hostage exchange, right? And many people were skeptical about the hostage exchange. They said that will have a bad effect on the fighting in Gaza and it will hurt our troops. Do you see the negative effects of the prisoner swap, or did it pass without any changes to the fighting?
So we have two important goals. We have to destroy Hamas and we have to bring back the hostages. And the military pressure we put on Hamas, this is what brought this organization to the point they were desperate to have a ceasefire, and to get this ceasefire, they were willing to release hostages, and this was very meaningful for the Israeli society and for the hostages themselves. Having said that, of course, it has a price. We got something and they got something. What they got is time to get organized, to equip, to regroup, to learn lessons, and of course, this is impacting the fight and making it now harder for the IDF. But this is the price we are willing to pay to bring back our women and children, and I think this price was reasonable. And we have to balance between wanting to destroy Hamas and taking the opportunities to bring back the hostages. We might see in the coming weeks also a release of hostages, which is done militarily and not through negotiations through Qatar like we did now.
So after we conquer the Gaza Strip, how do you see Israel's control over the Gaza Strip? After, as you said, we'll destroy Hamas. What should happen in the Gaza Strip? How should Israel keep control over the Gaza Strip? And will we just be another Palestinian authority, quote unquote, as we have in Judea and Samaria? Or we would have another composition?
So we talked about two goals of war, and we talked about destroying Hamas, and we talked about bringing back the hostages, but there is a third goal to this war, and this is making sure that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza threatening our citizens in the south. So to achieve that from a military point of view, after the war, we need control of the Egyptian border, the border between Gaza and Egypt. We have seen endless amount of weapons, know-how, money, terrorists going in and out, and this created the huge buildup we saw inside Gaza. In order to prevent that, we need to control this border. The other thing we need is full freedom of operation for the IDF to operate anywhere in Gaza, just as we do in the area of Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. We need to be able to go in, apprehend terrorists, and go out. And this pretty indefinitely what we need. From a civilian point of view, obviously, in the long term, we don't want to control everyday life in the cities of Gaza. We'll need to have some local leadership managing the life in the cities. But I agree with the government that said we cannot have Hamas, we cannot have the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, but also we cannot have the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority is corrupt. They want to destroy Israel. They are paying billions to terrorists, pay for slay, and they are not a solution. They are part of the problem. So we'll need to have local leadership, some kind of local solution, bureaucratic local leadership, and not any terror organization that is devoted to the destruction of the state of Israel.
Amir, I have read a couple of your past interviews, and you were quoted as saying that Jewish settlements in the Gaza Strip are not only an ideological objective for Zionism, but also a strategic objective. Can you explain that concept to us?
Yes. Well, we have to remember that the settlements in Gaza were not built by the right. They were built by the left. And they're built from a security point of view and not an ideological point of view. Basically, you have three models of existence in the land of Israel, which we tried all of them. We know what works and what doesn't work. One model is separation model, like we did in Gaza, and some intended to do also in the mountains of Judea and Samaria. Israel retreating, they're on one side, we're on the other side. This is a complete loss of control. The other side can build endlessly its capabilities as the Hamas did in Gaza. We saw what they can build. I mean, if they have done that in the mountains of Judea and Samaria, we couldn't even win such a war. And even if we could, maybe 10,000 soldiers killed. We need 20 IDF to deal with it. So separation is not an option. Another option is if you don't separate, then people say, you know what, let's have just military controlling the area. There is two problems with that. This was tried in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in South Lebanon. The two problems are, one, cannot be indefinite, because at the end of the day, if you control militarily an area which you are not responsible of and you don't have sovereignty, eventually you won't stay there. And then you are going back to separation, to the same situation you cannot live with. And also, what happened in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in South Lebanon, is without citizens of your own, keeping the roads open, having many towns along the way. You go into bases, and then you need to open the roads with APCs, with tanks. There is IEDs. Everything is complicated. So in South Lebanon, to go 6-7 miles, you needed a whole operation and preparation, and then you got shooting and so on. This doesn't exist almost in Judea and Samaria, because there are civilians driving all the way. So the one viable model in which you can really coexist, also assist the Arabs talking about economy opportunities, but also be secure and stay there forever, it's only Jewish towns. This is the basic way you can live. And on top of that, you can build solutions. The IDSF, הביטחוניסטים, we have many optional solutions for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. None of them include separation. None of them include retreats. None of them including throwing Jews out of their homes. We can definitely strengthen Jewish towns, and at the same time provide a solution also for the issue of the Palestinians governing their own issues.
So currently in Israel, everybody is celebrating our approaching victory over the Hamas, but there's a big elephant in the room that not many people are talking about. The fact that we have evacuated not only the area around Gaza, but also our northern settlements next to the Lebanon border, and those people don't want to go back as long as Hezbollah, the Lebanese terrorist organization, is present at the border. After Hamas, how immediate will be our war with Hezbollah? Because I'm not even asking if it's a question whether there will be a war. I think it will be at some time. But how immediate is that danger?
So war with Hezbollah might happen even before we finish the war with Hamas, if they initiate it. And they might. They might decide to initiate a war before we destroy Hamas, in order to try to prevent us from destroying Hamas. But let's say they didn't initiate a war and we indeed destroy Hamas, then we have three options. One option is to take the whole army north and start a full-scale war with Hezbollah in order to destroy Radwan and Aziz's forces in South Lebanon, and Hezbollah's capabilities to enable our citizens to go back to a safe environment. The other option is bringing the forces north, but pressuring the international community to implement Resolution 1701 that was passed in 2006 after the Second Lebanese War, that calls for the full withdrawal of Hezbollah from South Lebanon, north of the Litani. So a military pressure and threat might encourage the international community to implement this resolution in a way that will enable the Israeli citizens to go back, even if there is no war, a full-scale war with Hezbollah. And there is also a third option. And the third option is, after decisively winning against Hamas, going back to the buildup of a coalition, of an American-Israeli Sunni coalition, promoting the peace with Saudi Arabia and all other Sunni countries, all the way to Indonesia in the Pacific, and with a coalition dealing with the Iranian nuclear threat, with the Houthis, with the militias in Iraq and Hezbollah. But this requires American leadership. This requires the US to really push this coalition, this buildup of capabilities, and I'm hoping that a decisive win against Hamas will encourage the Sunni world, America, and maybe Europe, to understand that there are military solutions, that a military threat is the right thing to do in order to stabilize the Middle East and stop the Iranian aggression all over this region.
Amir, so for the end of our interview, I want to talk about something you just mentioned about the Houthis. Many people seem to underestimate Houthis as a threat, say that they're amateurs, that they're not a real organization that can do any harm to Israel, especially that they're far away from Israel. We have the whole country of Saudi Arabia separating between us and the Houthis. How real are Houthis of a threat, and how immediate are they of a threat? How soon should Israel deal with this threat?
So the Houthis are a big threat, but they are a big threat not because they are able to shoot missiles, which they are able to do against Israel. They are a threat because they are threatening freedom of movement of ships in the Red Sea, and this is devastating for Israel. We have now Israeli ships not going through the Red Sea, but going around Africa, which takes a month more, and it's much more expensive. This is affecting the whole Israeli economy. It's not a joke. And it's something we need to take care of. And this is also something that the US, which has US carriers in the Red Sea, need to deal with. We need to keep international trade ongoing. And when I mentioned the importance of a coalition, we have to remember that part of the idea of this coalition is building a new route of trade, which will go from India directly to UAE, and from UAE by train to Israel, to Saudi Arabia and Jordan. This route is a route that doesn't require going into Bab el Mandeb or into the Persian Gulf. So it's the shortest route, but it's also the safest route. And this is immensely important to achieve, not only for Israel's economical interest, but also global interest, to really have the ability to trade in a much faster way globally.
Amir, thank you very much. We just welcomed in our studio Amir Avivi, Brigadier General and the founder of the Bitronisti movement. Thank you all very much for watching the Tov Jewish News channel. Subscribe to us on all of our social media platforms. Thank you. Have a nice day.